In the 112 years since the release of the novel, Dracula has been in more films, plays, radio dramas, TV shows, video games, and whatnot than I could possibly count. He's appeared as a character in a movie more often than any other character except Sherlock Holmes. Oddly enough, only twice has any attempt been made to create a film that accurately portrays the novel. The first time was in 1970. The film was Count Dracula, and he was played by Christopher Lee, though it wasn't associated with Hammer horror. The second was in 1992, and it is called Bram Stoker's Dracula. The film is directed by Francis Ford Coppola, who previously directed the Godfather movies. Aside from having a great director attached to it, it also had a great cast full of star power. Two of my very favorite actors, Gary Oldman and Anthony Hopkins, star in the film as Dracula and Van Helsing, respectively. You've also got Winona Ryder as the female lead, Mina Harker, and Keanu Reeves as Jonathan Harker. Reeves is probably the worst actor in this movie. This was done fairly early in his career. It was before his breakout role in Speed, and previously his biggest roles were in the Bill and Ted movies. He's still not much of an actor, and I've always marveled at how he not only gets big roles in major films, but how he always winds up working with the most amazing actors and directors. Coppola chose Reeves purely because he needed a pretty boy actor that young girls could connect to, something he's come to regret since. I can't fault the film too much for Reeves' part, because even though he can't keep his accents consistent, he did contribute to my favorite scene in the movie, so he gets a pass. The rest of the cast is fantastic, as you'd expect from such big names and such good direction. Most Dracula films up until this point updated the legend to take place in whatever era they were being filmed. The Universal films took place in the 30s and 40s. The Hammer films took place in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. However, Coppola's Dracula takes place in 1897, the year the book came out, making it a period piece. It doesn't devote itself slavishly to its source material, however. It does make some changes, the biggest being additions rather than subtractions. Coppola explicitly states that Dracula and Vlad Tepes are the same person. In the novel, Dracula was only inspired by him. They also added a love story, and that's the film's tagline, Love Never Dies. The plot is fairly simple. It starts in the late 1400s, with Vlad being a warrior in the Order of Dracul, an organization that worked with the Catholic Church to fight the enemies of Christianity. As he goes off to war against the Turks, he finds victory, but vengeful Turk sends a note to his wife, Elisabeta, saying that the Impaler was dead. She kills herself in despair. When Vlad arrives home to find his wife dead, and the priests claim her soul is damned as a suicide, he renounces God. He uses dark magic to literally drink the blood of the church, becoming a Nosferatu. Hundreds of years later, Jonathan Harker is sent to Castle Dracul to close on Count Dracula's buying of Carfax Abbey in London. Dracula makes Harker stay for a month, where he's taunted by Dracula's brides and eventually imprisoned. Dracula himself travels to London, having gone from being an old man to a young man, and romances Jonathan's fiancée, Mina, and terrorizes Mina's friend Lucy. As Lucy gets sicker from Dracula's bite, a specialist is called in, Abraham Van Helsing, who fairly quickly deduces she's being attacked by a vampire. Lucy dies, and Harker escapes the castle and returns to London, where he meets with Van Helsing and Lucy's former suitors, who vow to destroy Dracula. As they attack the abbey and exorcise it, Vlad visits Mina again, as they have fallen deeply in love, and he tells her the truth. She's angry, but she wants to be with him forever. He bites her and has her bite him. Mina becomes a vampire, but an attack from Van Helsing drives them apart. The group chase Dracula all over Europe, ending with a showdown at Castle Dracul, where Van Helsing slashes Dracula's throat and Quincy Morris stabs his heart with a Bowie knife. This is the way he died in the novel, but the movie takes it further to give Mina and Dracula one last scene together. The film does add things to the original plot, but it is largely faithful, and especially faithful to the tone of the novel. It is the only Dracula movie I know that concludes the themes of sexual repression in the late Victorian era, which is really what the novel was about. As much as Dracula is a horror story and a love story, it's also a great big allegory for Victorian culture's insistence on purity and piety, and coping with feelings of love and lust, natural feelings that you're raised to believe are devilish and impure. While most argue about whether Bela Lugosi or Christopher Lee is the greatest Dracula, I say it's Gary Oldman. He plays the role with just the right amount of menace, but doesn't play Dracula as the epitome of evil, but rather as a tortured soul who just wants his wife back and is willing to do anything to anybody to get her back. The atrocities he commits are due to his anger at the Christian church for condemning his wife. He's creepy, sympathetic, charming, and grandiose all at once. The film is lush and stylish. Coppola insisted on not using digital effects, instead wanting to use stop-motion and old-style camera trickery to achieve great special effects, something that's done to great effect. The costume design and cinematography perfectly capture the feel of both Victoria-era England and the Carpathian wilds. The film's strong emphasis on sexuality is done well, such as the seduction scene with Harker and the brides, or where Lucy is ravished by a demonic-looking Dracula, or where Mina and Dracula pet a wolf, running their fingers all over its coat, clearly wanting to run their hands all over each other. The film also does eerie quite well. My favorite scene is the shaving scene, where Harker cuts himself shaving. Dracula destroys his mirror and shaves Harker himself, but not before licking the blood off the razor. The scene has an eerie tenseness that's hard to describe. I later learned the scene was filmed at like 2 a.m., and you could really tell, as it has the sort of quiet tenseness one can only feel at that hour. Gary Oldman was also very drunk while filming that scene, and his erratic yet fluid movements add perfectly to it. Gary Oldman also apparently did not get along with Winona Ryder, and the two would not be near each other unless they had to film a scene together. And yet the love scenes between them are completely believable, something that you can only chalk up to great acting. Also great is Anthony Hopkins, who plays Van Helsing as slightly mad. He's just a bit off. Not too much, but yeah, he's a bit off, and it works perfectly. Bram Stoker's Dracula is not only my favorite Dracula film, it's one of my favorite films of any genre. It has style, visual lushness, and great acting, and it makes the film something I could watch over and over again. If there's ever a Dracula movie worthy of a 10 out of a possible 10, it's this one.